This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1704, Previews!
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Eberly.
And welcome to the show. It's
Yes.
another heady previews episode in the offing here. A little bit more timely than the last one, and we do
Indeed.
Yeah, we again apologize for the lateness of the last one, but schedules just didn't quite sync up. But thanks to the heroic efforts of Chris and Shane, we got it out to you on the very last day of the appropriate month. And now 2 weeks later, we're back again, so you can actually use what we've got to say here to help inform your monthly orders, and we're excited to provide that service for you, aren't we, Chris?
Oh, you better believe it, brother. Amen.
And this episode of Comic Geek Speak, as all previews episodes of Comic Geek Speak, are brought to you by our good friends at the Discount Comic Book Service at their website, dcbservice.com, your premier source for online comic book shopping, where you can go for all of your online comics ordering needs. The discounts they offer there are without peer. All new books from DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse are automatically 40% off right off the bat. Comics, new releases from most other publishers are between 20 and 35% off. Collections, trade paperbacks and hardcovers from Marvel and DC are automatically half off as new. DCPS offers all kinds of bundles of the several different comics of a related theme, like new releases from Marvel, from DC. They've got bundles this month for Vertigo releases and Jinx World, continuing to celebrate the arrival of Brian Michael Bendis's creator-owned imprint at DC Comics. All Jinx World titles are bundled together at 50% off, just as an example. Every month they have specials, which can be 45, 50, or as high as 75% off. We'll spotlight a couple of those as we go along here. They offer different shipping intervals. You can have your new comics as ordered from dcbservice.com shipped to you on a weekly basis, or bi-weekly, or monthly, whatever's your pleasure. Just bearing in mind you have to pay the appropriate shipping whenever that happens. They're always they provide excellent customer service. They're reliable. Their prices are very reasonable, and they're a good friend of our program. So we all support DCBS, and we hope that you listening at home will too. Just go to dcbservice.com to check out what they can do for you to meet your comics ordering needs.
And in fact, Brother Murdo, I just received yesterday my latest shipment from DCB Service, and I can attest once again, beautifully packaged, right on the money, no omissions. I'm holding my hands right now, back issue number 105, spotlighting Bronze Age fist fighters, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the tomorrow section. So I concur with Murd that once again, DCB Service, if you've no longer go to the comic shop or you don't have one near you, it's the place to go.
Amen and amen. We all use them. We all trust them. We all love them. All right. And now, let us turn our attention to the previews catalog and releases that will be finding their way to comic stores beginning in September.
Yes, that black month when my holiday comes to an end and reality resurfaces.
Abandon hope, all ye who instruct here.
I'm only half kidding. I mean, my job in many ways is a wonderful thing.
Oh yes, of course, a chance to touch young minds.
Yes, indeed. Well, there's a lot of jokes we could take from that, but I have to maintain my decorum as a teacher.
Touch young minds. Influence young minds.
Yes, we try to influence positively rather than corrupt.
Of course.
All right, so as you said, they're coming out in September. We're in the Image section, and Murphy got a lot of number ones here.
Oh, as usual, coming from the true house of ideas in the major comics publishing world.
Indeed. And looking at page 44, we've got one of Diamond's designated gems of the month. Scotty Young, writing Bully Wars #1. Rufus, the biggest bully in Rottenville since kindergarten, suddenly goes from bullied to bullied on the first day of high school. He's forced to make a shaky pact with his favorite geek, Spencer, and his twin sibling besties, Edith and Ernie. Together they'll have to find a way to survive the Hunger Games-like contest known simply as the Bully Wars, where the winner will rule the school. Sounds immensely fun.
Yep. And apparently DCBS sees the gem quality in Bully Wars #1 as well, because it's one of their monthly specials. It's 50% off if you order it through dcbservice.com.
Art by Aaron Connolly, who's done Sabretooth Swordsman and Rocket Raccoon and Groot. And they emphasize it's an all-ages series, so that's always nice to see.
Okay, going to tone down the torment a little bit for the younger readers. Let's see, on the facing page there, page 45, something that they're touting as being in the vein of Bitch Planet, which we know is a favorite of our friend Danny O'Brien's. It's called Man-Eaters, and it's a story of a future in which widespread genetic mutation has caused all human women on the planet to metamorphose into bloodthirsty werecats whenever they hit that special time of the month. Certain amount of symbolism inherent there. So yeah, that's a new sort of feminist science fiction concept coming out through Image.
As panic spreads and paranoia takes root, the fate of the world rides on the shoulders of one 12-year-old girl. Part cat people, part The Handmaid's Tale. That's quite a combination. Man-Eaters will have everyone talking. It sounds like it's a lot of fun. I've never read Bitch Planet. Have you read that?
I do have a trade of it handy back at the apartment. I was hoping that we'd eventually do a book of the month on it, as suggested by Danny a couple of years ago. Never quite got around to it, so I never quite got around to reading it. But it is close to the top of my trade paperback reading pile.
Oh, the fabled pile.
Yes, one of.
Well,
I've got a whole mythos of fabled piles left there in my apartment.
Well, we have to get back to the book of the month format. I always enjoyed doing that immensely.
I would love it if we could.
Yeah, the challenge is just to get enough of a quorum going that we can have a good, lively discussion. We'll see what we can do, ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. All right, on page 46, the writer Joe Casey returns. Merlin, I'm brain farting here on my Roman numerals. What is that number?
Oh, do allow me. MCMLXXV. For those of you who, like Chris, are a little rusty in Roman numerals, that spells out 1975. And this is one of the releases for this catalog, Chris, that excites me the most.
I can imagine.
So it's set in the year 1975, of course, and it follows the adventures of an African-American lady cab driver in 1975 Manhattan. She drives a cab by day, but by night she fights monsters using a magic tire iron. In 1975 New York. So we've got elements of blaxploitation in there. We've got heroic fantasy, monster slaying, and it's all set against one of my favorite periods of recent histories. And it's written by Joe Casey, so bye, says I.
Mert, I'm gonna pick this up as well, because I always enjoy Joe Casey's writing, and then we can, no doubt, discuss it when it debuts. But yeah, I mean, my God, if there ever was a book tailor-made for your sensibilities, here it is on page 46.
And how? That is going to be a ton of fun. And on the next page, also kind of an interesting idea, Burnouts #1, written by Dennis Culver, art by Jeffo. And this is about three teenaged friends who discover that there's a secret alien invasion afoot in their hometown, but they can only see the aliens when they're under the influence of marijuana. So it's kind of a stoner horror comedy in comic form. And, of course, there's the lingering question of whether these aliens they can only see when baked out of their minds really exist. So there's a little bit of a layer there. So it would make for a good stoner comedy on the big screen, but instead it's coming to us on the small paneled page.
All right. Page 48, a new offer from Warren Ellis, and his co-creator of the book Trees, which I've never read. Jason Howard is the artist. A professional pathfinder is only ally, a disaffected young murderess, breaks out of a torture cell in pursuit of his worst extraction center ever, escaping on foot across a sprawling and secret off-world colony established 100 years ago and filled with generations of lunatics. Sounds like Warren Ellis, all right. I'm sure this is going to be fun. So did you ever read Trees, Murd, or no?
I read the first traded volume of it just earlier this year when I drove out to New Jersey this past winter to see Peter Rios' directorial production of the musical Ragtime. I got to the theater a little early and sat there in the car and read the first volume of Trees.
How was it?
It's an intriguing concept. It's about these gigantic alien life forms that resemble earthly trees, only like 20 times the size. They just sort of appeared at various spots around the globe a couple of decades ago and have just stood there doing nothing ever since. But the story picks up at about the time when signs are beginning to appear around the world that they're awakening and they're beginning to do something mysterious and sinister. So we're kind of picking up in a world that's lived with these things among them for a few decades, and we're shown the impact on global culture as a result of their presence. It's fairly intriguing stuff, but the pacing, given that we're dealing with life forms that move at the pace of trees, the story is kind of similarly paced. So not that much has actually happened by the end of the first volume. But it's something that I would want to read more of once I find the next couple of volumes at a reasonable price.
All right, so despite the pace, it intrigued you enough to want to return to it then?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
Yep. And this is the same creative team.
Go ahead, Murd, I'm sorry.
Probably also, it's the same creative team, so probably also. And it's going to be, from the sound of the description, even faster paced than Trees is.
All right, on page 51, Me the People hardcover. This intrigues me, A, because it's political, I'm always interested in that, and B, it's by Pia Guerra from Why the Last Man. I didn't realize Guerra was doing work for the New Yorker magazine, and she's done a string of editorial cartoons based on the cover and the description. If you are a staunch supporter of President Trump and or the Republican Party, this is probably not your book. But for everyone else, this sounds like it'd be extremely captivating. Again, I love Guerra's artwork on The Last Man, and I'm interested to see what sensibility she brings to these very controversial and divisive issues. It looks like here she's talking about just the Trump administration, their policies, GOP policies involving gun violence, etc. So be warned, folks. This is going to be a very political. They're political cartoons, so right. Depends on your political, where you fall on the political spectrum, or where you fall on the current controversies being debated back and forth, and then some in our country today. But that's Me the People on page 51. Now, Murd, what I want to talk about the most of this whole previews is on page 52.
All right, let's have it, Chris.
Yes. My heroes have always been junkies. This is an OGN, a hardcover. And all that matters is what follows here. It's done by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. That's it. I don't care really what it's about, although I'm going to look at and read the solicitation. But this is one of my all-time favorite creative teams in the last, I don't know how many years of comic book reading. I mentioned that in the last episode we did that they just finished up their what I already consider classic Kill or Be Killed series. What I love about Brubaker and Phillips, they do finite stories. They end them and they move on to the next concept. You've read Criminal, Fatale, Incognito. Go back to Sleeper, the DC Wildstorm universe, which is tremendous. Kill or Be Killed, which just ended, and now we have an OGN from them. I'll read the solicitation. Teenage Ellie has always had romantic ideas about drug addicts. The tragic artistic souls drawn to needles and pills have been an obsession since the death of her junkie mother 10 years ago. When Ellie lands at an upscale rehab clinic where nothing is what it appears to be, she'll find another more dangerous romance and find out how easily drugs and murder go hand in hand. Wow. I mean, I'm getting it. I've yet to not to fully savor and enjoy everything this team has done, working with the great colorist Elizabeth Breitweiser. They don't mention her name here, but I'm assuming she's working on it.
I assume so, too.
Yeah, so to me, this is one of the most exciting creative teams in comics, and I'm very much looking forward to this. $16.99 OGN hardcover, coming out October 10th. Also want to put on page 54. I've praised the book The Dead Hand periodically. I just got issue 4 last night. I haven't read it yet, but great. It's an espionage thriller with sort of a Cold War context. I don't want to spoil too much because in the first 3 issues there have already been a lot of great twists and turns. Again, it's Kyle Higgins, a writer we've praised many times in the show over the years, and he continues to deliver with the dead hand. So I highly recommend that. You can probably track down the first 3 issues somewhere, or wait for the trade and get issues 1 through 6. All right, Murray, what else do you want to talk about in Image?
Well, I don't think I'll have anything else to mention until the very end of the ongoing series section. We might stop and throw a quick mention on page 74 to the latest Howard Chaykin project, Hey Kids Comics, which is his own, based on true stories, semi-fictionalized accounts of sort of dirty laundry stories of goings-on in the comics industry and other industries thereunto related. So I'm sure he'll have some interesting and visceral, if not vitriolic, things to say. Okay, there's Paper Girls. Is getting to its 24th issue on page 82. I think the only other thing that I really have anything to say about in Image is on page 95. And that's on the Wicked plus the Divine 1373. Okay, there have been a number of these little one-shot historical specials, as they're called, throughout the run of The Wicked and the Divine. The Wicked and the Divine is about a group of mythological beings, deities from actual world mythologies, who are periodically reincarnated on Earth for a limited period of time. They live fast, they die young, they leave beautiful corpses, they get ready to do it again another century or so down the line. So they've lived multiple lifetimes on Earth among human beings. And while the main of that series tells about their adventures in the present day, these historical specials occasionally tell you what they were up to in their past lives in other historical periods. And the solicitation here on page 95 says that 1373 is the last one of these that there will be, which tells me that this series is going to be coming to an end fairly soon, more's the pity. But it's written by series writer Kieran Gillen, art by Ryan Kelly, and somewhat out of character for these two characters. One of the beings that is constantly resurrected is Lucifer, and she is incarnate as a nun in this time period. And one of the others, Ananke, is a penitent murderer, and it's a story of the two of them coming to grips with one another in the wake of the Black Plague, disease-ravaged Europe. So that's I haven't missed one of these yet, and I'm not going to miss this one either.
So, Murdy, have you read the entire series?
I own the entire series.
That's a foolish question on my part.
Yeah.
I love Kieran Gillen as a writer, so I definitely should get into this. I've never read this series.
It's very good, Chris. I mean, from what I have read of it. And plus, his usual collaborator is artist Jamie McKelvey, who's one of my favorite working pencilers these days.
All right, well, I'll have to hunt down the first trade. On the Dark Horse, then?
Yes, sir.
All right, so on page 100, Dark Horse has the license now for Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they must be still feeling the sting of the loss of Star Wars because they continue to aggressively pursue new licenses to publish. And this is a great get for them, I must say.
I'll say. Written by Jody Hauser, pencils by Stefano Martino. So this story takes you've seen the 2 seasons, haven't you, Mert?
I've seen season 1, thanks to that limited Target release on DVD of the first season, and it was
you enjoyed it thoroughly, correct?
Oh man, it really pushed a lot of the right buttons. I mean, it does say here in this Dark Horse section that it's nostalgia igniting, and yeah, it perfectly captures the feel of an '80s era. Overproduced science fiction fantasy text, like an E.T. or something of that nature, and yeah, it felt 80s, but it really brings back that cool, large feeling that young people who were kids in the 80s got when watching those larger than life cinematic entertainment spectacles. So this one is the story that Dark Horse is publishing is now going to take is going to fill in one of the gaps of the first season. It's one of the characters was trapped in an alternate dimension, sort of the underside of the reality he knows, which is populated by predatory demonic beings. And so he for several weeks he lived a life of constant terror. And so now Jodie Hauser, Lady of Faith, is going to tell us the story of what Will Byers, that character, was undergoing while his young friends were racing around trying desperately to find and rescue him back in the so-called real world. Well, anybody who's watched and loved the show, this series may really, as Murd said, push your buttons. Because again, they're filling in a part of the show that was not really revealed to us. So, and Murd, I look forward to your reaction when you watch season 2. Well, it's all in Target's hands now, Chris. Send out another one of those great facsimile VHS cases, and I'll buy it right away. I assume it would be too much to assume that you might be able to access Netflix at some point. Well, we've got the Wi-Fi. My computers probably have to, but I just don't do streaming, Chris. I'll wait until I can just buy a hard copy and watch it anytime I want. My friend, that was just the response I was counting on. Mm-hmm. I'm reliable that way. All right. Let's see. So on page 104, we have Mystery Science Theater 3000. I'm not familiar with this. Is this riffing on the classic television show? Oh, yes, definitely. Okay. Yeah, it's going to do, from what I'm seeing here, it's going to do for public domain old comic books what the classic syndicated TV series did for old movies. The characters, Tom Servo, Crow, and their human companion, they're all going to get sucked into the comic book dimension, and they're going to be standing around riffing on, making fun of pages taken from old comic books. I love the concept. Mm-hmm. The framing sequences are going to be drawn by Todd Knock of Young Justice. Fantastic. And with assist from Mike Manley, who was the inker of the classic 90s Power of Shazam series, one of my favorite runs ever. And didn't Mike Manley do did he do Superman Adventures penciling? This I do not recall. Someone come to the forums there, perhaps Mr. Weathington, rescue us in that, because I feel like, unless I'm thinking of another name, I feel like he did work on the DC animated comics as well. If so, it was wonderful. So we'll find out. All right, let's see. Page 111. I didn't read the floppies, but they're doing they're putting into hardcover form a comic about the famous World War I spy Mata Hari, who, of course, as we know, was executed by the French for apparently her role as a spy for Imperial Germany in the First World War. Mata Hari was a fascinating figure. She was a very famous sort of what you call, I guess, an exotic dancer of that time, and had the attention of many men. Some of whom were quite influential and powerful in that period. So this might be an interesting book to read, certainly for me at least. So that's coming on the hardcover, page 111. What else, brother? Oh, well, let's just turn the page here to page 112 and 113. Something called War Bears. It's a 3-issue miniseries, and it appears to... It's built on much the same premise as Michael Chabon's novel, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. It sort of asks the question, what if The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay had been set in Toronto instead of New York? And further, what if it had been written by Margaret Atwood, a novelist at least as highly esteemed as Chabon himself had written it? And that's exactly what's happening here, because Margaret Atwood of The Handmaid's Tale is writing this 3-issue exploration of the Canadian Golden Age of comics. Follows the fortunes of a creator named Al Zirakowski, who's trying to make a name for himself in comics around the time of the Second World War, and how his dreams are dashed by the rise of American comics in the wake of that war. And it's interspersed with images of his flagship character, the female Ursine, bear-like, of the superheroine Orsonet. So, and this is it's quite an interesting occurrence here that Margaret Atwood is now venturing into comic books. Fascinating concept. I'm probably going to give this a shot. I love the premise of it.
So thanks, bro. I missed that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Oh, anytime. That's why we're doing this, Chris.
Yep. Indeed. I wanted to point out on page 116. Look at this page. It's all Black Hammer.
So much Lemiriness.
Yes. Age of Doom is the latest sort of volume in the Black Hammer saga. Black Hammer's an Eisner winner. We've talked about this many times in previous episodes, but once again, to me, this is one of the best superhero comics being produced today. It's sort of a let's call it a deconstruction of Golden Age type heroes. In a more edgy view of that type of hero. It's magnificent. And next to that, we have the Quantum Age, which is a subsidiary of the main Black Hammer storyline. I just got issue 1 of that today. Yesterday, to give that a read. But if you love classic, Golden Age type concepts, but you're not afraid to see them get their hands a little dirty, please do yourself a favor and try Black Hammer. Awesome.
If you're a fan of Legion of Superheroes, too, pay special attention to the Quantum Age, because that specifically is what Lemire is riffing on in that miniseries.
Murd, outstanding.
Or ongoing, I should say. It does say that the Quantum Age is ongoing. Wow. So plenty of Legion stories, according to Lemire. It's a Lemiracle.
You heard that first, ladies and gentlemen. He can do that with a straight face and make it sound awe-inspiring and epic. Well done. What else, brother, from Dark Horse?
Let me take a quick step back here from the Lemire page. Actually, the things on both 114 and 115 look kind of good to me. On page 114, this is a Rick Remender concept, written by him with art by Eric Nguyen. It's called Gigantic. This is a library edition hardcover of a concept called Gigantic. It's this kind of kaiju influence. It's about a giant armored alien superhero who has come to Earth and has been almost immediately enslaved by evil reality show producers who are making an unauthorized Truman Show type ongoing documentary of his life and adventures without his consent. So there's a couple of fairly up-to-date contemporary concepts that Remender is throwing together into the Remender blender to give us this this interesting-sounding story. I'm not going to buy it in hardcover, of course, but it's something I'd like to maybe check out in a less expensive format later on. And opposite that, the return of Ulysses Fariñas to comics, bringing back his concept Gamma, which is sort of a mature reader's riff on the idea of Pokemon, a world full of these magical and scarily powerful little monsters that can be captured and trained and abused and exploited in all kinds of entertaining ways. So he's showing us something like what would happen if adults, rather than idealistic little 12-year-olds like Ash Ketchum, were running around in the world of Pokemon. And he's also taking a poke, no pun intended, at a couple of other Japanese entertainment concepts, properties, and genres, such as the Super Sentai, Power Rangers, kaiju monsters, stuff like that. He's throwing them all together into this 4-issue miniseries of a concept that he introduced, I think, in Dark Horse Presents a while ago, or possibly in a one-shot unto itself. But anyway, I like Fariñas' artwork. Its Japanese influences are obvious, but it's taken to a different level of detail, sort of Jeff Darrow-esque. So that is something that I will be buying and reading, certainly, because I've always thought that there was room for some more mature readers' oriented takes on Pokemon, and that's exactly what Fariñas is trying to give us.
And Murd, let it never be said that you don't love your kaiju.
Indeed not.
Indeed. All right. Let's see.
It looks like Dark Horse is dabbling in some Disney stuff.
Indeed.
Page 119, they've got the second issue of their Incredibles 2 tie-in. Actually, it's the third issue. And then they've got Frozen comic on page 120, and on page 121, some of these European-produced Disney comics, adaptations of classics of literature, Treasure Island and Moby Dick with Disney characters. Those are being presented to an American audience, courtesy of Dark Horse. So Disney is spreading those licenses around to a few different publishers.
Page 122, Joe Golem, The Drowning City. Mike Mignola writing, Chris Golden writing, Peter Bergting art. Have you ever read any of these stories?
Joe Golem?
Yeah.
Trying I don't think I have, Chris. I think I've thought about buying a couple of the earlier miniseries, but I don't know that I actually pulled the trigger on them.
Okay, because the concept sounds right up my alley. Occult detective, so you can maybe have elements of the supernatural and also crime noir. So, and it's Mike Mignola writing with Chris Golden, so I'm sure it's a lot of fun. By the way, quick aside. Speaking of noir, have you ever read Dashiell Hammett novels?
I have not.
Okay, I'm almost done reading The Red Harvest, and I read The Maltese Falcon a couple of years ago. Wow, tremendous stuff. Now I understand where the classic Coen Brothers film, The Miller's Crossing, came from, but good stuff. Yeah. Still aside there. I'm
wishing Jamie D were here to bat that back and forth with you, Chris, because I think he's probably read, or had probably
Indeed.
read a little of that. On page 126, I don't know if you guys mentioned this in the last episode, but in the last previews episode, but there's a new Beasts of Burden miniseries out. This is
We did not, sir, so hold forth.
Oh, happy to, because I do want to mention it, because this is one thing that I have shouted out on previous previews episodes that I've heard several of our listeners say that they're glad that I mentioned. That I introduced this to them. But it's called Beasts of Burden, and it's the story of a group of local dogs with occasional assistance from special operatives from other species who have taken it upon themselves to form this little supernatural protection society where they battle occult threats to their hometown of Burden Hill. So they're dog Ghostbusters. And in this miniseries, Wise Dogs and Eldritch Men, the second issue of which will be on sale in September, these dogs are starting to come closer to the root of these mysterious supernatural disturbances that keep plaguing their sleepy little town. And apparently they go up against super creepy raccoons with human faces. The art for these Beasts of Burden stories usually comes from Jill Thompson of Sandman and Scary Godmother, but this one is being drawn by one Benjamin Dewey. Either way, it's if you happen to be an animal lover and also like a romping good tale of the forces of good and mundanity versus the supernatural, give this a try. It's pretty charming stuff.
All right. I'm on page 130. I have to mention this every month because it's so damn good. World of Tanks Citadel, which is the code name for the German offensive that we know historically know today as the Battle of Kursk in 1943 in the Eastern Front in World War II. I just read the third issue, I guess, yesterday, the fourth. I don't remember which. But again, these are top-notch war comics that Ennis is producing here with artist P.J. Holden. Again, wonderful balance of top-notch historical authenticity, the detail, the research, but never sacrificing character development and making a compelling, dramatic story. If you want to read a great war comic, or if you've never read Ennis's war comics, this is a great place to start right here. What else, my friend from Dark Horse?
Well, Chris, did you notice on page 132 that Brian Wood is writing a Terminator miniseries?
No, I totally missed that.
Yep, it's a second issue out in September, it looks like.
Oh. NYPD officer Lucy Castro is being hunted by the T-800 and seeks protection from a local crime boss to survive the night. Will it be enough? It's Brian Wood. I mean, I'm sure it's great. I'm going to have to grab that. Good catch, Murd. Oh.
I'm here for you, man.
Always.
Yep.
Wow.
I think that was the last thing I wanted to mention for Dark Horse.
All right. Let's move on then to DC.
I'll say that's the most time we've devoted to the Dark Horse section of the book in many a month. So
well, it's great company, and I'm glad we can devote as much time as we can to it.
Hear, hear.
All right. So we have I assume you have your separate DC previews catalog in front of you, brother.
Yep, I have it here in hand.
All right. So the first page of Wonder Woman Earth 1 Volume 2 by Grant Morrison and Yannick Paquette. Did you read Volume 1?
I did.
Okay. What did you think of it? I don't remember.
Well, I'm struggling to remember myself. I remember thinking a couple of Morrison's creative decisions irked me a little bit. For I don't know if I wanted to, I don't remember how much I said about it at the time, but it's something pertaining to her origin, where Morrison cleaved a little too close to the current DC Universe company line, and I was a little upset about that. But there were some fun things that he decided to include in his version of Wonder Woman's past. Etta Candy was there, the Kangas were there, and I was looking forward to what he might choose to do with his version of Wonder Woman's reality in the future, and it seems the time has come to find out, but not quite yet for me, because I'm waiting until the trade paperback version arrives. This is
Fair enough.
But yeah, I will definitely get the paperback version when it's available.
Now, the big to-do here, and I say that without sarcasm because of who's writing it, is on page 3. Heroes in Crisis number 1. Now, here's all that matters for me. It's written by Tom King. Now, Tom King could be producing his interpretation of, his grocery list.
Uh-huh.
And at this point, I have such faith in him as a writer that I would buy that list and read it. So apparently he's doing a big DC event. This is his first big DC event they have him doing, and I have absolute faith in this. So there's a new kind of crisis threatening the heroes of the DC Universe, ripped from real-world headlines by C operative turned comics writer Tom King. How does a superhero handle PTSD? Welcome to Sanctuary, an ultra-secret hospital for superheroes who have been traumatized by crime-fighting and cosmic combat. But something goes inexorably wrong when many patients wind up dead, with 2 unknown operators as the prime suspects. Harley Quinn and Booster Gold. Shane, are you listening?
Shauna, are you listening?
Indeed. Through the DC trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman to investigate. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is quite a concept. I mean, not only is this an exploration of the psychological impact of superhero activity on its practitioners, which has got some undeniable parallels with the damage done to the psyches of real-world heroes. As Tom, as the copy tells us, he used to work for the CIA. He's seen this firsthand, and he can draw on that experience for the writing of this story. So not only is there that, which is worthy in itself, but also Tom manages to weave in quality superhero murder mystery. So this is indeed a different kind of crisis. It's not an infinite crisis so much as it is an intimate crisis. It takes things down to the personal level. There will be some exploration of the relationships of trust between the various heroes, especially those who have been made most vulnerable by the psychological injuries they sustained in the line of duty. But yeah, there's also there's some continuity considerations, some fan favorite characters thrown into the spotlight. It's really more a crisis in the sense of Meltzer's identity crisis than it is like one of the cosmic continuity reshuffling crises that I've made my specialty. Even if it's not that kind of crisis, though, it's a kind of crisis that I want to read, especially as you have said, Chris, because it's written by Tom, who is fantastic. So yeah.
Now, art by Clay Mann. The cover looks beautiful. And I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but didn't you get that jolt of electricity up the spine when Murd started holding forth on the concept of crisis in the DC Universe? Murd, I was counting on that.
Oh, happy to give you that little spark, Chris. And just to excite everyone even further, Heroes in Crisis number 1 is 50% off on DCBService.com. So you can try the first issue at a good discount and find out what you think.
And it's on sale September 26th. I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, Tom is a long-standing friend of the show. He's been on the show a couple times years back. I'm hoping we can get him on again someday. I'd love to do a good interview with him. But I have complete faith this is going to be a real page-turner. So, the next page, a new DC imprint entitled Black Label. Bring edgy and provocative standalone stories to the legends of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and more. So, who better to start this than Brian Azzarello writing Batman Damned number 1? Prestige format, Murd.
Yep, 3-issue series.
The first line of the solicitation, the Joker is dead. There's no doubt about that. But whether the Batman finally snapped a scrawny neck or some other sinister force in Gotham City did, the dead is still a mystery. Problem is the Batman can't remember, and the more he digs into this labyrinthian case, the more his mind starts to doubt everything he's uncovering. This is Azzarello. I'm sure it's going to be riveting. Artwork looks gorgeous by Lee Bermejo.
Ooh, looks like John Constantine is going to be involved too.
Oh yeah, look at that, Murd. Well, and Dead Man. Oh, yeah. Well done. I'll definitely give that a read.
An auspicious beginning for the new Black Label imprint. Kind of it reminds me a little of the Marvel Max thing that Marvel did beginning of the last decade. Just creator-owned continuity. Not necessarily creator-owned, but creator-focused is what I meant to say. Continuity-free, much more mature reader-oriented takes on established characters.
Indeed. Well, I could definitely give that a shot. I'm looking at page 8, Doomsday Clock. We haven't talked about the last couple issues of that. Are you reading that Curly Murder, or is it back in the pile now?
It's back in the pile.
Okay. I'm still enjoying it. We can talk about that. When we have Shane on next time, we'll talk about that further without spoiling it too much for Murd.
Oh, I could just go in the next room and hold my ears, too. That's perfect.
Isn't he swell, gang? What a team player. All right. Vertigo. So we've got on page 10, we've got the Dreaming #1. There was an original comic called The Dreaming, wasn't there, some years back?
I'm pretty sure I've got the first issue of it. Yeah, it was a story about Mervyn Pumpkinhead. I want to say I want to say Terry Laban, was it? Or I might be thinking of something else too.
All right, so they're bringing back the concept. All right. That's $3.99 on September 5th. House of Whispers, written by Nalo Hopkinson, art by Dominique Domo Stanton on page 11. This is also part of Neil Gaiman's Sandman universe. The House of I'm going to mispronounce it. I apologize. Dahomey Murd? Dahomey?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dahomey. Yeah.
Okay. The houseboat of Ezruli Freda, where the souls of voodoo followers go when they sleep to beseech the flirtatious and tragic goddess to grant them their heart's desires and counsel them on their futures and fortunes. It seems like DC, because last month they launched a new Sandman series where Gaiman will have a role in that. It looks like they're trying to, return to that legendary portion of the DC universe here. On page 12, again, Murd mentioned the Jinx world. So, Bendis is over at DC, so now they're printing all of his creator-owned properties. United States versus Murd Incorporated, #1. This is a series that I read some years back, where it was about the mafia having control over large parts of the United States and the intrigue that followed therein with some of the characters. And this looks like a sequel to it. I really enjoyed the original arc, so I may give this a shot. It's the classic Powers team, Bendis and Oeming, so that's something to be said for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I have not read Man of Steel 1. Mr. Deemer praised it on our last Comic Talk episode.
Yep, and Peter Rios has subsequently told me that something happened in the early going of that miniseries on which I might have thoughts, in his words. So I'm curious to see what that is. And again, I got issue #2, I believe, is the one that's penciled by Doc Shaner, which has his take on the Toyman, classic Superman villain. So, yeah, I'd want to read those first 2 issues at least. And Peter kindly offered to let me read his digital copies, but I don't read digital comics. So, thanks, Peter, but yeah, I'll find those someplace on paper.
Good old Petey Poo. And Bendis is writing Action Comics. I've not read anything. I've read Action Comics 1000, parts of that, enjoyed it. Haven't read Man of Steel, although I have at least the first 2, so I have to get to those so we can talk about them in the future. I'm excited, though, on page 14 and 15, the Sync Atlantis storyline, which continues in Suicide Squad 46 and Aquaman 40. I mentioned ad nauseum on the show how much I'm really enjoying Abnett's take on the world of Aquaman. He's really emphasizing the politics, the intrigue of Atlantis and the throne and all that goes with that. So if you enjoy Aquaman and you haven't tried Abnett's run on the character, I highly recommend it. And again, I'm just seeing some of the information about the forthcoming Aquaman film, which is coming out later this year. I'm hoping, based on what I've read and what the images I've seen, that they're going to approach Aquaman and the movie this way, in the sense they're really going to emphasize his ties to the throne and the politics of Atlantis. So, but this is good stuff. Murd, are you reading Super Sons? Are you going to read Adventures of the Super Sons?
I picked up one or two issues along the line. The Peter Tomasi is a pretty solid, meat and potatoes kind of superhero writer. But yeah, the characters don't interest me all that much, I have to admit.
Well, fair enough. Page 18, we have Batman by Tom King again. One of the great defining arcs for the character in recent years. Again, I'm reading the series in trade. Although I did just get the wedding issue. I'm going to probably cheat and read that one soon so I can talk about it on the air at least with Shane, because I'm sure he'll have read it. So it's so reassuring on page 20 to see Kelly Jones' Batman with those long ears projecting from the cowl.
Yes. I think Matt is somewhere he's grunting in pain right now. He hates the Longhorn Batman.
I know he does. I love that Doug Monk, Kelly Jones era. Those were really fun stories.
That's when I first read a Batman comic. It was during that period.
All right, page 24. I have to praise Priest Deathstroke every month. It's outstanding. And this is still including Batman. The current run of Deathstroke is all about it's a gripping story as to who was the actual father of Damian, Slade or Bruce. And I don't want to spoil anything because I'm still reading this. It's not done yet. But as only Priest can tell it. I'll just leave it at that. Good stuff. I didn't realize, Bert, on page 25 that James Robinson's writing Detective Comics.
Oh, yes. It's a little guest arc here featuring Two-Face. I do find, I may have mentioned this, I'm sure I have sometime in the last 13 years, but for me, I like Batman's villains. They're almost more interesting to me nowadays than Batman himself is. So I tend to base except in the case of Tom King's run, which I'm just reading because it's freaking excellent, whoever the antagonists happen to be. But a lot of the rest of the time, I choose which Batman stories I'm going to buy and read based on which villains he's facing off against. And this James Robinson written arc, we've got Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And not one, but two different versions of Firefly, plus Two-Face himself, just to double your pleasure and double your fun. And on top of all that, Robinson is writing it. So, this arc will definitely get my money.
It'll get my legal tender as well because James Robinson's writing it. So, amen to that. I'm sure I want to mention on page 27, the Benson sisters continue their new run on Green Arrow.
Yep, fighting off against a vigilante with an even stronger and more obnoxious social conscience than Ollie's himself, somebody named Citizen. And now hats off to Julie and Shauna for using not only Black Canary, but Kate Spencer, alias Manhunter, as members of Ollie's supporting cast.
I never read the Kate Spencer Manhunter series. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I have most of her run from the mid-2000s. I haven't quite read up to it yet, but...
okay.
I've obviously saw merit in it, or I wouldn't have bought as many issues of it as I did.
Well, I look forward to that time bubble one day, my friend.
Okay, I look forward to bringing it to you, Chris.
Amen, brother. All right, so what else we got here? What else did you want to shout out from the superhero section of DC here?
Well, let's see. Page 30, this new Hawkman series written by Robert Venditti with art by Brian Hitch. It's starting to bring the Thanagarian Hawkman, Qatar Hall, back into the mix. Like we're going to have Carter Hall and Qatar Hall facing off against each other. It's a little ambiguous as to whether they'll literally meet each other or they'll meet on the spirit plane or something, but it's something that's been a long time in coming, since the Thanagarian Hawkman has been pretty strongly de-emphasized ever since Jeff Johns engineered the resurrection of the Carter Hall version of the character. So that's going to be addressed now here in the New 52/Rebirth era.
And I salute any writer who tries to throw their hat in the ring when it comes to dealing with Hawkman's labyrinthine history. So now, if I remember correctly, in the Jeff Johns run, which I loved, did they establish that Qatar Hall was sort of one of the aspects of Carter Hall's history as Hawkman, essentially? Is that how they handled it, or...?
He kind of got sucked into Carter Hall's legacy of reincarnation. Like he died, and some bit of his soul was trapped within Carter Hall's essence. I haven't read all the way through Johns' run on Hawkman. I just got up to the Hawkman JSA crossover Black Rain recently.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yep, it's good stuff so far. I've read the first 3 parts, I think. But I've seen the part where Shaira Thal, the Thanagarian Hawk woman, came to St. Rock trying to get answers about what happened to her partner from Thanagar, and not really getting much of anything concrete. Although she did wing away from St. Rock feeling something akin to closure. Like no, just somehow she was convinced that Qatar Hall of Thanagar was in a better place. But he didn't really come back, and she didn't really find him.
And I want to remind listeners, I don't have the episode number in front of me, but Peter Rios several years ago, I think it was right around Christmas time, it was meant as a Christmas gift for the listeners, helmed a magnificent spotlight on Hawkman. Were you on that one, Murd?
Trying to recall, I'm not sure that I was, but the episode number is 989, and it was recorded. It was released on Christmas Eve, 2010.
There you go. And Peter does a wonderful job, sort of taking us through the very convoluted history of Hawkman, and I highly recommend it because he does. It's really it's one of the best spotlights the show has ever produced.
The fact that it was released so close to Christmas time makes me think I might not have been able to be on it. But
that's a good point. It might have been Pants and Shane. Now that I think about it, but definitely check that spotlight out. He talks about the classic Hawkworld miniseries by Tim Truman, which is wonderful, and that's where sort of the Qatar Hall and the Shaira character they come out of that.
Well, the post-crisis versions of them do anyway, and it kind of
exactly. Yeah, I misspoke there. So, yeah, that's a CGS classic. All right, what else we got here, brother?
Let's see, page 34. We've got a continuing story of the Scott Snyder-written Justice League versus the Legion of Doom, as opposed to the Injustice Gang of the World. Apparently, Legion of Doom is now once again, for I don't know, maybe the third time, something like that, introduced to DC continuity. So, all you old school Super Friends fans should be paying attention to that. It's written by Scott Snyder. Can't be bad. Page 38, we've got the final issue of the Mr. Miracle maxi series. I'll just let you groan away about that, Chris.
I can't help but have these verbal outbursts of just sheer comic reading euphoria. This is Tom King, Mitch Gerads. I'm so glad this is a finite series. Just like he did with the Vision, he's visiting, or not visiting, but he's presenting us a time-honored, character's been around for decades now, but he's putting an interesting new spin on the character without sacrificing any of that character's history, which is always the mark of a great comic scribe. Either hunt down the back issue, inevitably there's going to be a trade or a hardcover of this, and if it's a hardcover, it is worth paying every penny for. One of the best series DC's producing right now. All right. What else, brother?
Next thing I've got is on page 47, where Scooby-Doo Team-Up number 42 has got the gorillas.
Jamie D., this is for you, brother.
Yeah. Enough said.
Was it Gorilla Grodd?
As many different DC Comics gorilla-themed characters as writer Shali Fish can think of. They'll just throw them all in there. And it says here, Mashumala, Gorilla Grodd, and Ultra Humanite, who did occupy the body of a mutant white ape for a time, after all. But also, on the hero side, Congorilla Sam Simeon of Angel and the Ape, and Detective Chimp. And we can see there's a Nazi gorilla on the front cover, too. So
I was just going to note that. You've got a gorilla with a German Iron Cross on his breast, on a breastplate, and he's wearing an old World War I era German spiked helmet. Who is this character?
Maybe he's more a Prussian gorilla than a Nazi gorilla. I don't know. He's the Hun, anyway. But yeah, I'm not. I think there was actually a Nazi gorilla at some point back in DC's golden age, but I can't be sure exactly where from. But Shali Fish likes to include a bunch of deep cuts in these Scooby-Doo team-up issues. It's one of the things that makes it such an enjoyable series. Indeed.
And that series, it's up to issue 42. It's sticking around, which is great.
Yeah, it was bi-monthly for a while there, so it gives you an idea just what a long lifespan it really has had.
All right, anything else from the superhero section of DC, my friend?
Not as far as ongoings go, no.
All right. Let's take a look at trades. So we have Batman on page 63, Batman Volume 7, The Wedding. So issue 50 just came out, which is the actual wedding, which I have not read yet. I'll make sure I read before next time Shane is on. That's on page 63. Again, because I came very late to this part, I'm reading Tom King's run on Batman in trade. We talked in an earlier episode about I think he's committed to writing the book for 100 issues, if I remember correctly, which is damn good news. So we have several more years of Tom King goodness to go on Batman. Well, if you got to scratch that 90s itch on page 65, Batman Night Quest: The Crusade, Volume 2. What did you think of that material, Murd?
Much of it I haven't read, Chris. I mean, I wasn't really 100% into DC Comics yet at that time. Although I certainly did buy Batman number 500, which, the big foil stamped cover introducing Asbats. This would be something to ask Matt about. I was a little disturbed by the Azrael Batman, but I think even then I realized this probably wouldn't be a permanent change.
Indeed.
But, they milked that concept for what it was worth. They didn't over-milk it, I don't think, and then they just kind of shuffled it off the center stage and brought Bruce Wayne back, and all was well again. But yet it's fondly remembered by 90s kids. And I know there's at least one or two people who I want to say Brent Cosina, our friend Ian's occasional co-host of his podcast, Comic Timing, was a big fan of Azrael and Asbats.
I enjoyed the Denny O'Neil Azrael series. I followed that for a while. I got a beautiful Barry Kitson art, I remember correctly. Page 67, I've heard a lot of great things about this story, so I may get this trade because I didn't read the individual issues, is Batman White Knight, written and drawn by Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy's been to Super Shows, hasn't he?
That I do not recall.
I want to say yes. After years of epic battles, the Dark Knight finally finds a way to cure the twisted mind of his archenemy, the Joker. The Joker is now sane. The Clown Prince of Crime has now changed his ways, fighting for good in Gotham City, and it may just cause Batman to go over the edge of his own sanity. So I think this, the whole concept is it's a flip, where suddenly the Joker is a benevolent character, and Batman might be more nefarious. So I'm going to definitely pick up this trade and see what all the hullabaloo is about. I like Sean Murphy's work in general. This is under the DC Black Label imprint. So
retroactively.
Indeed. All right, on page 71, I always like to point these out. Flash, the Silver Age Omnibus, Volume 1. A beautiful cover. Great retro cover for the Flash by Nick Darrington. This is Showcase 4, 8, 13, 14. Of course, the classic Showcase 4, the first appearance of the Silver Age Flash. And the Flash Comics 104 and the Flash 105 to 132. $100, $99.99. 864 pages. Volume 1 hardcover. This is any other trades I wanted to shout out here. Oh, on page 74, Hellblazer 30th Anniversary Edition hardcover. Some of the greatest hits from the Hellblazers history. Saga of Swamp Thing 37, his first appearance. Hellblazers 11, 27, 41, 63, 120, 146, 229, and 240. A new introduction by Sting, whose appearance inspired the creation of Constantine. And includes the first ever, this is interesting, complete lineup of Constantine's life up through his long-running Vertigo series. Issue 27 is the classic story Holding by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean, one of the greatest single-issue comics I've ever read. Oh, it's magnificent. Murray, look at this. This is a story we both enjoyed on page 75. The Dark Side War, the Essential Edition. They're publishing the whole thing.
Yeah, in the essential format. Yeah, it's the Anti-Monitor, it's the Crime Syndicate, it's Darkseid and the Justice League, and it's all drawn. Just take a look at some of the names listed here: Jason Fabok, Jim Lee, Francis Manipul, Phil Jimenez, Scott Collins, and others. Not a stinker in the bunch.
No, did you? I'm sorry. Did you read the story? I shouldn't have assumed that.
Well, I read the first couple of issues, and then I couldn't bring myself to read the rest. I want to preserve the surprise.
Fair enough. I won't say a word then, but all I'll say is I know Shane and I both thoroughly enjoyed this. So I look forward to talking about that with you down the road. We'll talk about it in time.
Precisely the right inflection, Chris. Well done.
Honored, brother. Page 80, the 30th anniversary of Volume 1 Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes. It's been 30 years! Oh, God. Murd, we're all getting older.
Yep, there's nothing for it. It is inevitable.
And if you love the Super Sons, at page 82, you can buy a whole Super Sons omnibus. So there you go.
Wow, 608 pages of it. And
Murd, page 84. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got excited seeing this. This is all you, brother.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Hold forth.
Yep, Ian Levinstein went out of his way to let me know about this on Facebook. It's okay. So DC is finally reprinting a Golden Age classic. It's not technically a DC story; it was a Fawcett story, but it's the Shazam, or the original Captain Marvel, the Monster Society of Evil. It's being published in a deluxe edition hardcover for $50, 272 pages. This was really a Golden Age milestone. It was kind of revolutionary. This was a story that was serialized across 24 issues of the monthly Captain Marvel Adventures. Well, actually, it was probably more. It might have been published more often than monthly at that time. But Captain Marvel Adventures number 22 through 46, this single story ran. It was like a long-running film serial, kind of like the young readers would have been accustomed to seeing at their local movie palaces on Saturday afternoon. Even just looking at the artwork here, this is like the title splash from the first chapter, and it's even styled like a film matinee serial thing. There's with the title card projected up on a screen and young viewers down below looking up and cheering. But it's Captain Marvel and friends versus the world's wickedest worm, Mr. Mind, who's kind of a mystery man when he first appears. We don't know that he's just a telepathic worm until... actually, his telepathic powers haven't even been established yet. He's just a worm with a keen criminal intellect who speaks through an old-fashioned loudspeaker strapped around his neck. And he recruits all these... previously seen Captain Marvel bad guys, including Dr. Sivana himself, and rounds them all up into his Monster Society of Evil. And Captain Marvel has to battle them one at a time or two or three at a time. Finally gets to the bottom of the person who's behind all of this when he meets Mr. Mind on his asteroid in outer space. And then the story proceeds back to Earth with Captain Marvel just chasing Mr. Mind, who is a breakout character and a big success with the readership by that time all on his own, around planet Earth. And so this went on for 24 issues, and this was unheard of in the Golden Age, when it was rare enough to find like a story that was continued from one issue to another. It was rare enough to find a two-part story in the Golden Age, let alone one that ran for 24 or 25 chapters. New chapter every third Friday. There it is. So, yeah, it's a very historically important story, and it's pretty entertaining. I mean, it holds up better than a lot of Golden Age material in the present day, I will say that. It was written by the definitive Captain Marvel writer, Otto Binder, who wrote the great majority of the Captain Marvel stuff of the Golden Age. Art by C.C. Beck, the co-creator of Captain Marvel, and his right-hand man, Pete Costanza. And there's been one collection of this. It was put out back in the 80s sometime by some historical library-type publisher. But now DC is putting out their own sort of keepsake bookshelf version of it. And if you're any kind of fan of Golden Age comics and of Captain Marvel in particular, you got to have this on your shelf.
Well, and I also want to refer our listeners to the string of magnificent spotlights Murd helmed on Captain Marvel in the Golden Age, where he goes into the significance of this book in even greater detail. So,
yes, thank you, Chris, for that nod. Also, yeah,
of course,
it's a real milestone, and
indeed. Ready to move on to IDW, my friend?
As you say, sir. Let us press on.
All right. I want to point out one thing, though. I'm back in the regular previous catalog for those keeping score at home. Page 144. I'm saying this primarily for Shane.
Right. You
got the Batman classic TV series Bruce Wayne and Batphone resin busts. So it's tremendous. So you got the Adam West likeness of Bruce Wayne on the phone. The best part of this for me, though, is he's wearing an ascot.
Oh, and the expression on his face is that look of arch intensity.
Yes. Doesn't get any better.
Beautifully captured.
All right, IDW. So some great license stuff here. Now, I want to point out they have on page 146 a trade reprinting the wonderful – it came out – it was a weekly book, a weekly miniseries, Star Trek: The Next Generation Through the Mirror by the Tipton brothers, who are the ace Star Trek writers in comics these days. And they often work with our long-standing friend of the show, J.K. Woodward, and J.K. does some of the covers here. This is a great story. It's where the Picard of sort of our universe meets the Picard of the Mirror universe, and you can only imagine what ensues there. Really fun story. I highly recommend that. Now, we'll appreciate this because this kind of dovetails nicely out of our discussion of the Retro Fan Tomorrow's magazine, our last episode. Yep. Star Trek versus Transformers. And they're capturing the Star Trek characters in that animated style. Right. Which is appropriate considering they're meeting the Transformers.
Yep, so it's like Filmation meets Sunbow. And you're absolutely right, Chris. This dovetails beautifully with our discussion of Retro Fan Magazine #1, because Andy Mangels, a comics historian Andy Mangels, who also co-wrote the Creating the Filmation Generation book about Lou Scheimer and his Filmation animation studio, he did the first in a series of Saturday morning history essays about this 1970s Star Trek cartoon. And it kind of whetted my appetite for some more 70s animated Trek content. I mean, this Transformers and Star Trek are two cartoons that I watched and enjoyed as a young man in the 80s, because Nickelodeon was airing the reruns of animated Star Trek back in those days. And, I think this is the first time I will have encountered this version of the Star Trek characters in comics, and to see them teamed up with animation-friendly Transformers characters, it's quite a little nostalgia injection there. I don't think I'm going to be able to resist it.
And the tagline is, a 5-year mission meets a 4-million-year war.
Beautiful.
Enough said. All right, as always, you got to give tip of the hat to W for sort of cornering the market on licenses. They got Transformers, slew of those, Ghostbusters, of course G.I. Joe, and for Shane, Mask. Look at this on page 152. Shane, this is for you. Mobile Armored Strike Command riding Venom's trail. Huh.
Collects the Mask Revolution one-shot, all 10 issues of the series, and the 2017 annual.
All right.
And
okay.
Something fairly exciting coming up here then on page 154 and 155. All right, this is another one of these mashups that IDW has been executing so deftly over the past couple of years. Batman and the Max, not Mask, but Max, M-A-X-X, #1, subtitled Arkham Dreams. So this is a miniseries that teams up Batman with Sam Keith's creator-owned character, the Max. I keep wanting to say Mask, but it isn't. It is not that green-faced character played by Jim Carrey in a mid-'90s movie. No, this is the Max as seen on MTV in animated form back in the 90s. This is going to be drawn by creator of the Max, Sam Keith, co-written by Keith and John Layman of Chew. And this... it's going to be a fantastically weird story. It's basically going to be Sam Keith doing his own take on Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. The Max is temporarily interned in Arkham Asylum, and some mad psychologist is doing his own experiments on the inmates there, and their psychotic fantasies are becoming reality across Gotham City. Batman, of course, has to get involved. He finds an ally in the Max, and the two of them get to explore the mindscapes of various Batman villains as perceived and interpreted by Sam Keith. And internal odysseys of the mind has been sort of Keith's stock in trade, the various comics that he's written and drawn over the years, including in the Max. So this is going to be a fantastic combination of characters with a great creative team, and I'm looking forward to seeing his take on people like Joker, Scarecrow, etc., and what Batman and the Max do when they encounter, the dark, deviant inner workings of their minds. The first issue is $4.99, and if you order it through dcbservice.com, you can get it 50% off $2.49.
All right. I want to point on page 156, Dick Tracy, Dead or Alive, written by Lee and Michael Allred. Art, Rich Tommaso and Michael Allred. Wow. All right.
Yeah, Dick Tracy.
That's exciting.
Yep, coming back into the spotlight here. Yeah, and Allred's got him.
That's definitely worth a try. I'm going to jump ahead, Mervyn. Let me know if you want to jump back to page 174. Batman the Complete Silver Age newspaper comics, the slipcase set. So that collects newspapers, dailies and Sunday strips from 1966 to 1972. Sheldon Moldov, Joe Giella, and Carmen Infantino. Strips written by Whitney Ellsworth. And below that, King of the Comics, 100 Years of King Features Syndicate. Crazy Cat, Popeye, Flash Gordon, Beetle Bailey. Good stuff. And on page 178, a new edition of From Hell, the classic by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. Their take on Jack the Ripper. Fully colorized.
This volume contains the prologue, chapters 1 and 2, and all original annotations. Most important of all. 64 pages, $7.99.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
64 pages, $7.99.
Anything else you want to do from IDW?
Two things from the middle of the IDW section.
Please.
Well, IDW 2 has been publishing some Disney books. Dark Horse has got a few of them. Marvel has done some. Joe Books has some. But in particular, on page 167, Disney's Tsum Tsum Kingdom. And Tsum Tsums are these little sort of beanbag toys with Disney characters' faces on them. Disney Channel has been running short subjects of these little Tsum Tsum characters capering around and getting into hijinks. They're very popular with young children, and as can be attested by Matt's young daughter, Sophie. She's crazy about Tsum Tsums. So if you have a little girl or boy in your family who might enjoy seeing some comic book adventures of the Tsum Tsums, this is a 48-page special featuring their adventures, written by Jeremy Lambert and our friend Tom Zoller, who also brought us Love and Capes and Time and Vine, a story that Pants and I both enjoyed very much. And he's also written a bunch of My Little Pony comics, which I enjoy. So that's a mark of quality there. And on the facing page, Tangled the series. They've after the computer animated feature film Tangled, which is Disney's take on Rapunzel, the Disney Channel has started airing a 2D animated ongoing series based on those same characters, Rapunzel and Friends. And now Rapunzel is coming to comics in a 3-issue miniseries written by Katie Cook. Boom.
Boom indeed.
So those are both worthy projects, especially if you've got younger readers in the family. And I did want to throw out a mention on page 171, what appears to be an all-ages cosmic adventure and intrigue kind of story, adventure and mystery, with a young female protagonist. It's called Impossible Inc., and it's written by J.M. DeMatteis. So if you're wondering what that particular master writer has been doing lately, that's what.
Good. I missed that, Mert. Again, just clutch hitting. I love DeMatteis' work.
Yep. Sub me in the bottom of the ninth, Chris.
Ready for Marvel?
Excelsior.
All right. Okay. Wow, what a shock. Wolverine's coming back.
I never saw it coming.
I'm sorry, that was a little snarky, but come on.
It's hard to be completely cynicism-proof when you've been reading comics as long as we have, Chris. But he's coming back. And if you want to know how, it's written by Charles Soule, art by Steve McNiven. It's probably not going to be a bad story. If you'd like to read it, you can order it through dcbservice.com. The first issue is 50% off.
I'm more excited. We talked about this. Shane and I did about Fantastic Four returning. This issue 2 years featured, again, it's Dan Slott and Sarah Pichelli. So covered by Saad Ribic. Woof.
They are in great hands.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that immensely. Page 9, I'll always praise Marvel 2-in-1. The wonderful Thing in Human Torch stories by Chip Zdarsky. Tremendous series. I'm wondering if the way that the solicitation is written, I'm wondering if this is the last issue.
I was kind of wondering that myself.
Which would make sense because the FF has reformed by the time this book has come out. But again, if you've been jonesing for FF the past few years, get this series. You will eat it up. Wonderful. Plus it explores the way the Doctor Doom character has changed so much. In a way, it's rare you see a character going through truly transformative changes, especially in the big two properties. But they're doing very interesting things with Victor Von Doom. And they explore that further in Marvel 2-in-1. Is this a new Heliopolis Franklin Richards on page 8, Mert, or is that a reprint? No, it's a reprint.
Yeah, it's reprinting from several sources, yeah.
Great stuff, though, for kids. I remember my younger son, Joe, when he was younger, he ate up the Franklin Richards stories. Those are really fun. Murder, on page 10, that's a hell of a Thanos there. I like this art by Brian Level.
Yep, continuation of Donny Cates' acclaimed run on Thanos that, again, you and I skipped, perhaps to our regret.
I do have, again, that was a financial decision more than anything else, but I may have to go to the trade on that because I love the Thanos character, and I know people on the forums and other places have been praising that, so to check that out. As Guardians of the Galaxy on page 12.
Yeah, that looks very good, actually. So it's a special strike force of second-tier Asgardian characters off on a cosmic adventure. We've got Image Comics import Angela, who is revealed to be Thor's illegitimate sister. The Destroyer, that famous suit of cosmic battle armor. Scourge the Executioner, currently back from the dead, apparently. Frog Thor, which is not Thor turned into a frog. Apparently there's an actual frog who lives in a pond in Central Park who has got Asgardian superpowers. That's going to be good for fun. The original version of Valkyrie, the Brunhilde version, not the Thor Armageddon version. And most exciting for me, Eric Masterson's son, Kevin Masterson. I'm glad that somebody remembered poor Kevin, since his father has been in limbo for so long. But now he apparently has grown a bit, and he's got his father's old Thunderstrike mace and a really stupid-looking strong guy haircut. But that's his burden to bear, I guess. And now he's the new Thunderstrike. And this motley crew is going out into the Marvel cosmos to battle Nebula, granddaughter of Thanos, or possible granddaughter. I'm not sure whether that relationship was ever nailed down in the comics. She used to claim to be his granddaughter anyway. And who's gotten her hands on an Asgardian superweapon, and this ragtag bunch has to take her down and reclaim this Asgardian artifact for safekeeping. And it's an irresistible mixture of B-level characters, and it's written by Cullen Bunn with art by Matteo Lolli, and I think I'm going to buy it.
All right. And my next question to you is, have you been reading the latest iteration of the Infinity Wars?
Well, I haven't read it yet. I'm not sure if I've gotten the first issue. I haven't looked through my last DCBS service shipment very carefully. But I'm definitely ordering it. My resistance was worn down.
All right. Well, when the time bubble reaches that port, I look forward to that discussion.
I'll meet you at the docks, Chris.
All right, page 22. I want to praise Jason Aaron's Avengers. I've read the first 3 issues, I believe. He gets all the characters' personas down perfectly. That their dynamic interplay, their interpersonal histories. It's immensely fun, and the first arc deals with the Celestials, so it's awe-inspiring cosmic crisis only the Avengers can handle. So. Highest recommendation for that.
Was that first arc drawn by Ed McGuinness?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm pretty sure I bought all the issues of that. And, looking on page 22 at the cover to number 7, I'm not convinced that the Ghost Rider needs to be a cross-millennial legacy hero, but looking at this image of Ghost Rider 1 million BC riding atop a flaming woolly mammoth, that is just a damn cool image. Yeah, no,
it is a great image, and yeah, they had the Ghost Rider who's in the car. I forgot the name of his alter ego. I think he's a Latino
Robbie
man.
Reyes, I believe, is his name.
That's right. Yes, I'm enjoying how they use him in Avengers. I'll just say that. So now I'm interested on the return of West Coast Avengers on page 24. That's issue 1 was solicited last month. So we got Tigra on the cover. Haven't seen her in a while.
Attack of the 50-foot Tigra.
Yep. That's what's her name? Greer
Nelson.
Greer Nelson, who was of course the Cat in the classic brief Bronze Age series in the early 70s. Page 27, Todd Lacey Coates, his take on Captain America. I just got issue 1, haven't read it yet, but looking forward to discussing that. Very excited to read that.
Oh, and the Cap Annual for this year is a World War II era story illustrated by Chris Sprouse.
Oh, perfect artist to do a World War II story.
Oh, you said it.
Put that on my list. Now, looking at page 31, Dan Slott's a great writer, and I didn't order Iron Man 1 just again because I'm trying to cut down a bit financially on how many books I'm getting, but damn, I'm tempted because it's Slott.
Yeah, I've pre-ordered a couple of issues of this. I don't know how long I'm going to stick with it, but yeah, I'm just glad to see Slott working his magic on the rest of the Marvel Universe. Spider-Man's monopolized him for too long.
Indeed, and it looks like they're returning, and they even Murd will appreciate this callback. They reference Avengers Volume 1, 224, where there was that brief romance between Janet and Tony.
Was that part of the Roger Stern run? Am I remembering that right?
Oh, I don't remember if it was Stern or not. Someone can help us in the forums, but it was a great storyline because they actually start to question whether or not Tony's on the up and up because Janet's very emotionally vulnerable at that point because of what's going on with Hank and so forth. So interesting to see them return to that. Look at that cover of Thor number 5. Oh, on page 32. Tremendous. Again, Jason Aaron is. When we look back on the history of the Thor comic, let's say some years from now, this is one of the great runs right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you think it'll measure up to the Simonson run?
That's a good question. I don't know. Ask when it's over. Because the Simonson run is one of the all-time great Thor runs, of course, but Aaron's is pretty damn magnificent. Spidey has an Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 1 on page 33. This deals with the alien symbiote. Actually, this is interesting. So this is telling you when Peter was sleeping and the symbiote would take him out without his knowledge at night. This is going into what he actually did. That's interesting. This goes back to the 1980s. All right. That is a great cover on Amazing Spider-Man 6 on page 35, Humberto Ramos. Some villains you like on that cover there, I think,
Oh, yes, quite a few of them. Well, Nick Spencer, you may remember, was the writer of the Superior Foes of Spider-Man series from a few years ago. So Boomerang was a member of his cast back then, and apparently he's a member of Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man cast even now. But, yeah, I can see the Kangaroo is in there, the Spot, the White Rabbit, Killer Shrike, the Living Brain, and the Brothers Grimm. Oh, yeah. I wonder if this is happening at the bar with no name.
Oh, that's possible. That's possible. Looking on page, I'm jumping ahead a bit, page 43, they're continuing the 20th anniversary of Marvel Knights. By the way, I just want to point on the opposite page, Spider-Man Deadpool 30 and 39, great callback to the Marvel Fanfare number 1 cover from the 80s. That was a fun series.
Yeah. I think I have that issue. Did it have... Was the angel on the cover of that one?
Yes, it was. Yep, it was a beautiful Michael Golden drawn issue written by Chris Claremont.
All right, I am not muddled.
Page 43, 44, 45, great callbacks to various Marvel Knights characters. They're doing reprints of classic Bendis-era Daredevil stories, Silver Age Daredevil, Luke Cage, The Punisher, Jessica Jones, Hellcat, because, Patsy Walker's a key character in the Jessica Jones TV series.
Uh-huh.
Iron Fist, Black Widow, great stuff.
It's all for $1 or slightly less on dcbservice.com.
Merv, we got to go to page. Of course, there's no page number. Why do they do that? I think it's page 48.
Oh yes.
Why don't you hold forth on that one?
Be happy to. All right.
Yeah.
This is a one-shot. It's entitled Journey into Mystery, The Birth of Krakoa. It's written by Dennis Hopeless, who brought us that Avengers Arena series from a few years ago, and also wrote some Spider-Woman stories in between times, and art by Jibril Morissette Fan, and it's the... Okay, so there have been several stories over the years on the DC Comics side of the reality divide of various war characters going to Dinosaur Island, the war that time forgot. The Suicide Squad's been there. The Losers have been there. Well, now we get to see Marvel's version of that kind of story, as in World War II, in the ending days of World War II, Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos go to Marvel's version of Dinosaur Island, Krakoa, the island that walks like a man, as seen in Giant Size X-Men #1 of the first mission of
Yes.
the all-new, all-different X-Men. It was this island that had been fused into a single Gestalt collective entity by atomic testing, so that every living thing on it was part of the same hive mind, and it could form itself up into this big humanoid monster that the X-Men then shot into space at the end of that one shot. And Krakoa was seen again after that, but this, I guess, is telling us the secret origin. Behold the startling birth of the island of Krakoa, and Sergeant Fury and his gold bricks and the Howling Commandos are on hand to help give us kind of a human perspective of what happened there. And it's written by Dennis Hopeless, and he made me enjoy that Avengers Arena series in spite of my distaste for the concept. So he can write a good story, and I'm going to trust him to tell a good one here. I will order this one-shot.
I figured you would, my friend. I want to point on page 53. I'm really enjoying Ta-Nehisi Coates' new volume of the Black Panther. It takes place in a far-flung future where there's a star-spanning Wakandan empire, and a rebellion is being led by a man named T'Challa, who may or may not be the T'Challa of the Marvel Universe, who's been flung into this reality. It's outstanding, the first two issues. So I highly recommend that. Great artwork by Daniel Acuna. Let's see. I'm going to jump ahead a bit, Mert. If you want to jump back, please feel free. I want to point out on page 64, 65, and forward, all the X-Men books. I'm a little downcast. I love these characters, but I just can't find the energy to jump back into all these titles. There's just too many of them now.
Yep, I did for the sake of Shadowcat and Colossus's wedding, but I don't. It wasn't enough to make me stick around, I don't believe.
I have the wedding issue. I haven't read it yet because
Yep,
I love those characters. So I got to go. I'm going to jump into page 79 and 80. The Darth Vader and Star Wars titles are just tremendous. If you're a Star Wars fan, you're not reading these books, please do yourself a favor. Kieran Gillen right now in the flagship title Star Wars, he's doing an arc called Hope Dies. I just read the first installment. I just got it yesterday. Gillen wrote that legendary Darth Vader Volume 1 series from Marvel a couple of years ago, and he continues to show he's got the chops here. Hope Dies may be one of my favorite arcs of the year. Out of all comics, if it measures up to the first issue. And no one since Al Williamson renders a more awe-inspiring and terrifying Darth Vader. LaRocca's Darth Vader is amazing. Wow. So I highly recommend that.
There's going to be a one-on-one confrontation between Vader and his daughter, the other. Okay.
All right. Anything else from the main Marvel titles before I go into trades, my friend?
No, let's just proceed to trades.
Okay, actually I should point out on page 687, again for the kids, Marvel Superior Adventures Captain Marvel, first day of school, number 1. Charlie Fish writing, Mert.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he gets around.
Terrific. Well, that's sure to be a winner for younger readers, or all ages readers, I should say. This is exciting on page 90. Conan the Barbarian Omnibus Volume 1. So this collects issues 1 through 26, Savage Tales 1 and 4, Chamber of Darkness 4, Conan Classic 1 through 11. This is the classic Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith stories, also Gil Kane, John Buscema. If you love Conan and you either never read these or want to own them in a prestige format, this is the book for you. These are wonderful. Many are adapted right from the Robert E. Howard pulp classics. And this one of Thomas's one of his many important contributions to Marvel, that he convinced them to take on the license for Conan in the early 1970s. And Conan was a huge seller for Marvel in that era. Murder on page 92, Guardians of the Galaxy, an omnibus of the original Guardians, going all the way back to Marvel Superheroes number 18.
And for all you young whippersnappers who are wondering where Rocket Raccoon is, just pick it up and find out for yourself.
Didn't some of these characters appear briefly in the second Guardians movie?
Yes, they did. Yes, as
okay.
kind of a team unto themselves. I'm trying to remember. I think Sylvester Stallone was supposed to be Starhawk.
Yes, that's correct. That's right. So if there's anything else here in trades I wanted to shout out. Page 103, the classic Grayson Rucka Black Widow stories are being put in a complete collection. Those are excellent. I highly recommend those. J.G. Jones art. On page 108, X-Men Grand Design. This is collecting. These stories haven't actually come out yet. These are the Pisker's take on the Bronze Age X-Men. Again, these are. Oh man! If you haven't read it's a 2-issue, the one he did in the Silver Age, where he revisits the entire Silver Age history of the X-Men, and he puts his take on the narrative, but he doesn't change anything. It's just him interpreting what happened. It's magnificent. Highly recommend that. Let's see. I think that's it for Marvel, my friend. Yes. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Let me go back. You know what? Page 135. I also have to point out the Epic Collections. So we've got West Coast Avengers, the first arc from that classic series in the 1980s. These are good bang for your buck. They're $30, but you got a lot of issues in them. Page 136, Doctor Strange, Volume 1, so the early Lee Ditko. By the way, Murray, we should mention, I'm ashamed we didn't mention that Steve Ditko passed.
So that is kind of that's the sort of thing we would bring up in a comic talk episode. But yeah, he definitely needs a formal expression of regret.
Yes, and you're right. We'll do a much lengthier tribute to Mr. Ditko when we have our next comic talk. But I was sorry to read his obituary in the Times. I think it was just last week or so that I saw it.
As of the time of this recording, it was 1 week ago.
Yeah, one of the giants of the American comic book meeting, and we'll certainly return to that topic in the near future. Page 137, it's early Bronze Age Thor, Lee, Conway, Kirby, Buscema, Neil Adams, Thor 175 to 194. That's great stuff in there. All right, I'm good with Marvel.
Let me throw one more trade in there, Chris.
Please.
On page 132, Quasar, Cosmos in Collision. It's a trade of issues 10 through 25 of that great cosmic series, written by the late, great Mark Gruenwald, art by Mike Manley, we mentioned him earlier in regards to Mystery Science Theater 3000, and early work by Greg Capullo. I've got every issue of Quasar, and I didn't even realize Capullo had drawn any of it. So that's kind of exciting.
I know your love for that character.
Oh, yes. Not only the character, but just what Gruenwald was able to do with that series and the way he explored different rarely visited corners of the cosmic part of the Marvel Universe. Good stuff for that reason. But I should point out to the canny listener and cannier consumer, these issues could probably be found for pennies on the page at your local comic book shop or at a convention. So you don't need to shell out the $34.99 for the trade. But it does have a fancy new Todd McFarlane cover. So if you're into that.
That's a good point, Mert. I mean, if you any store or show with a solid bargain bin selection should be able to find some of these.
Although I should mention I think it's number 17 is a little difficult to find because I think that's the issue. But there's one issue in there where Quasar mediates a cosmic race. Put on by an elder of the universe called the Runner for all the fastest land speed characters of Marvel Universe Earth, including a transplanted Barry Allen, who shows up in the Marvel Universe with a wink and a nod from Mark Gruenwald. That issue, because of Barry's appearance, is kind of it's a little difficult to find. So it should be included in this trade. So if you have trouble finding that one, maybe pick up the trade just for that.
And I know you've praised that issue in the past, so... All right, ready for Dynamite?
Dynamite.
All right. God, I love you. All right, page 192. I'm very excited about this. First of all, it's James Bond, the origin. They're putting Bond back in the historical context of World War II when he's a very young man. What's important is that it's written by Jeff Parker, who I know is going to be very reverent in when he applies the history. I'm definitely getting this. I've loved every single James Bond book Dynamite has produced. Especially the recent miniseries, The Body, which is some of the finest James Bond comics I've ever read.
Looks like this is going to be an ongoing. It's going to be, at first at least, a teenage James Bond getting embroiled along with the rest of the United Kingdom in World War II.
Indeed.
So, yeah, that's interesting premise there. I don't know how quickly time is going to pass here. I'm hoping we're not going to spend the entire series in the early 40s. But, yeah, there's a lot of different... points prior to the beginning of Fleming's novel series that Parker could choose to delve into here. And the first issue of this intriguing new series is 50% off if you order it through dcbservice.com.
All right. I should point on page 198. Have you ever read seen the Toxic Avenger film or other Troma offerings? This is the art of Troma. So, the class of Nukem High, Poultrygeist, Tromeo and Juliet, Toxic Avenger. Something for every 80s kid's bookshelf.
Yeah, I was never much of a Tromaville fan. It's just a little too gross for me.
I want to point on page 211, Battlestar Galactica Classic Omnibus Volume 2. What's important here is that it's Abnett and Lanning. I may pick this up. I never read these stories. It takes place in the classic Galactica universe.
Right. And I do think I bought most of the issues of that run. So I won't need the soft cover, but simply based on who wrote it, I can recommend it.
Indeed. Anything else for Dynamite before moving to Boom?
Real quick, on page 200, for fans of the TV series Charmed, starring Shannon Doherty and others, it's about a group of young witches. Here we have Charmed Magic School Manga, an original graphic novel coming out from Dynamite, with art by Jonathan Lau, who has not only illustrated some Green Hornet comics for Dynamite in the past, he's also a CGS listener. I'm friends with him on Facebook. So,
terrific.
Yep. I'm not sure if describing his and marketing his art style as manga is 100% accurate, but it is accurate to describe it as good. So if you like Charmed and would like to read some comic adventures of these characters illustrated by a talented artist, try this OGN from Dynamite.
Speaking of OGN, I was thinking of Shane here, too, on page 230 from Boom now. Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown. Original graphic novel softcover.
Yeah, I think I remember this story as an animated TV special form. From
they say here, inspired by the classic animated special.
It's a brand new graphic novel adaptation.
If you're a Peanuts fan, that's for you. What else, my friend?
Let's see. I know there was something. Yeah, here we go. Also from Boom, on page 228. They're bringing back the Over the Garden Wall line of comics that they'd published for a while there. This was an animated primetime TV miniseries that Cartoon Network aired maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's kind of... It's an old-timey American-style fairy tale. It's very reminiscent of those Wizard of Oz books that I liked so much. It's about two young boys, half-brothers, I believe, that wander out on Halloween night and get lost in a strange fairyland called the Unknown. They encounter some fairly, they have some silly misadventures. They have some very dark and frightening misadventures as they try to struggle their way back to reality, the waking world. And it's kind of an early 21st century version of what The Wizard of Oz was to the early 20th century. Although it takes its stylistic cues from the same time period as The Wizard of Oz. It kind of feels like The Unknown feels like an early 20th century L. Frank Baum era Fantasyland. So I enjoyed it very much. It's a great thing to watch on an autumn night. And Boom has produced a bunch of comic books based on this miniseries. There's a new 5-issue miniseries called Hollow Town, which gives us yet another in a seemingly endless series of mini adventures that the brothers Greg and Wirt have as they wander around the unknown. And there's also an original graphic novel sequel in which Greg and Wirt discover that one of the little fantasy creatures that had helped them through the unknown, a human girl who'd been transformed into a bluebird who acted as their help and companion throughout their adventures. She somehow has found her way into the real world, and so the two of them have to find their way back to the unknown to take her home. So these are both on pages 228 and 229.
All right. I wanted to point on page 239. I've been raving about this for the past few months. The Ursus Planet of the Apes miniseries, now in softcover, just finished. In the running for my miniseries of the year. Again, I'm a huge fan of the writer David Walker. Talked about him many times on the show. And again, I love a story where they take a character or a concept that maybe that hasn't been explored that in depth, or maybe people used to look at it from a certain perspective. They tip it all on its head, and they make you look at it in a different way. that's what Walker does here with the classic Planet of the Apes character, General Ursus. Gripping and poignant. Highest recommendation. So, what else, brother? Anything else from Boom?
I think that's all I've got for Boom.
Okay. All right, moving into the rest of the book. What jumped out at you, brother?
Okay, well, let's see. We can start with Action Labs. Since these are all things solicited for September, mostly September release, might as well point out on page 260, Ghoul Scouts, Night of the Unliving Undead, which is about a team of young monster fighters. It's written by our friend Steve Bryant, so it might make for good seasonal reading for a young person in your household.
Excellent.
And I'm sure there'll be even more such seasonal reading on offer next month, of course.
Of course. I wanted to point out on page 318, there's a staff pick from previews. The Unwanted Stories of Syrian Refugees, hardcover. And this is one of the key crises of our time. The impact of the Syrian civil war, not only on Syria itself, but on the surrounding Mediterranean and Europe. And, of course, the ramifications that have rippled outward to our own country in many ways. So, this from what I'm reading of the it's a lengthy solicitation, but this sounds like a very important book. Award-winning writer and illustrator Don Brown explores the Syrian refugee crisis in his graphic novel Unwanted. He traveled to refugee camps to research the book, meeting refugees, hearing their stories. So that's probably well worth checking out. Again, if you're interested in one of the great crises of our time and the ripple effect it's had on not just on Syria, but really the whole world, certainly the United States and Europe, this could be a very important book. So, point that on page 325 under Chartwell Books. This sounds very interesting, Murd. DC Comics Heroines 100 Greatest Moments, written by Robert Greenberger. From Batgirl to Wonder Woman, all the greatest female characters of the DC Comics universe are paid homage in this epic tome. 304 pages, $24.99 hardcover. Overview of 100 notable scenes where women show just how tough they are. High-quality panels pulled from a Silver and Bronze Age of the present. Oh, this sounds great, Murd. Wonder Woman, Batgirl, Supergirl, Black Canary, Zatanna, many more. Oh, wow.
And it's written by Bob Greenberger, a name that I deeply respect, as he is the principal engineer behind the Who's Who, the definitive directory of the DC Universe, published back in the 80s. So he is a DC researcher extraordinaire. I think he also provided little historical notes or essays to all the Millennium Edition comics, re-releases of key DC Universe and beyond titles that were published around the year 2000. So he knows his DC history, and I can think of very few people better qualified to write a book like this. So it's bound to be a quality publication.
That's what I wanted to hear, my friend. I knew his. I recognized his name, and I figured you would know more about him than I did in terms of I couldn't recall, and well done.
Happy to serve, Chris. But if I may, before we proceed much further,
please.
There's a large jump back I would like to make, which I think may be of interest to you too, actually. We've spoke often about how impressed we are with what upstart publisher Aftershock has been doing.
Yes.
Comics over the past couple of years. Well, I'm not going to talk about Aftershock, but I'm going to talk about a similar venture that's being launched with this month's previews. It's on pages 278 and 279. It's a company called Ahoy Comics. All right, and it's being brought to us by Tom Peyer, who is very high up on my list of top 5 underappreciated comics writers. And now he's trying his hand as a hopefully not underappreciated comics publisher, because he's founded this Ahoy Comics thing. And Ahoy, as it turns out, is an acronym for 4 qualities that he hopes Ahoy Comics publications will bring to the readers. Abundance, more pages of comics, text pages, short stories, satire, poetry, criticism, illustrations, cartoons, added value, all along the line. Humor, so he's guaranteeing that these books aren't going to be too dark. That's a good thing. Originality, he's cats in space. Masked crime fighters ripped away from their respective comics. In a nutshell, if you've already read anything like it, we're not going to publish it. And finally, Yes is what the Y stands for. Yes to monthly series. Yes to collected editions. Yes to meaningful stories, dramatic art, and beautiful design. Yes to working and shipping on schedule. Yes to the fine production details that make enjoyment effortless. Yes to page numbers. Page numbers, Chris! Yeah, so it's a good little mini manifesto he's put together here, and it's got me fairly enthusiastic about where this new company is going. And making me even more enthusiastic, they're launching 2 new series this month. The first one is called High Heaven, written by Tom Peyer, and it's about a guy, kind of a cynical, pessimistic nudge of a guy who goes to heaven and discovers that it's terrible, and what he does about it once he gets there. And it also features a couple of backup stories and a text story written by Grant Morrison. So, yeah, the good stuff going on there. And then below that, even more interesting to me, The Wrong Earth #1, written by Tom Peyer with art by Jamal Igle. And this is a story of 2 different parallel Earth versions of a Batman-like hero named Dragonfly Man, one dark and grim and gritty and the other Silver Age style. And what happens when they get stuck? Well, each gets stuck on the other's parallel Earth and has to make sense of one another's respective milieu. So all kinds of humor, hijinks, and high adventure are going to happen there, I'm sure. Plus, it's drawn with trademark quality by Jamal Igle, a good friend of ours. You know what a perfectionist he is, and he is very excited about this project, I know, from what he said about it on Facebook. Plus, there's also backup stories and a text story by Grant Morrison here. So for those at least, just give Ahoy Comics your $3.99 per issue here for those text pieces, if for nothing else. Spare yourself paying like $50 or $60 to read them in a Grant Morrison Obscurities deluxe hardcover several years down the line. But even beyond those Grant Morrison text pieces, though, these 2 series sound like really cool premises, and I'm going to buy them both, particularly The Wrong Earth. I'm really excited about that one.
Well, Mr. Peyer couldn't have asked for a greater testimonial, Murd.
Well, I hope I'm done right by him and Jamal, because after all,
now, you're a big fan of his Our Man series, correct?
Absolutely. It's any fan of DC Universe history, and particularly the history of the Justice League of America, really should have picked up the 24 or so issues of that series by now and read them. Shane and I both go out of our way to recommend that Tom Peyer written and Rags Morales drawn series at every chance we get.
I'm ashamed to say I've never read that, so I got to hunt that down.
It's a good one, Chris.
Yeah, I have no doubt. All right, I'm jumping. Go ahead, Bird. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, there was one other jump I wanted to make. Forward again
please.
To the Archie section of the book on page 295. It's another historical miniseries, Chris, exploring the impact of World War II. It's called Archie 1941. Which comics fans may recall is the year in which Archie and a couple of his friends made their first appearance in Pep Comics number 22. And this is written by Mark Waid and his old partner from his Flash days, Brian Augustin, with art by Peter Krause, who penciled the lion's share of the issues of that 90s Power of Shazam series and is responsible for giving it its 40s retro Art Deco flair. So he's the perfect choice to illustrate this story. It's a miniseries, 5 issues, dealing with Archie and his pals, and looking at them, portraying them a little more naturalistically than they were in Pep Comics number 22, say. Not played entirely for laughs. It's more a look at the lives of the typical American teenager and how they might really have been impacted in the year 1941 by that year's global events, i.e., among other things, Pearl Harbor and the entry of the United States, the setting in motion of events that would drag the United States into World War II. So it's Mark Waid writing it, so he's going to be conscientious about that kind of thing. It's going to be as period accurate as he can make it and still have it be entertaining and relatable. It's a little off-putting to see Jughead Jones wearing that newsboy cap instead of his trademark crown beanie. You may not have known this, Chris, but the technical name for that kind of hat is a whoopee cap. I did some actual research on that.
I did not know that.
Yep. It's okay. That's what Jughead wears. Or you could just call it a Jughead hat because he's so associated with it now. But yeah, it's a 5-issue miniseries, and I'm thinking that if it's a fiscal success, Waid, in partnership with possibly other illustrators, might try showing us more realistic portrayals of Archie and friends in other decades, like Archie 1955 and so forth. Just a different miniseries, each showing us a glimpse of what it means to be the, quote, typical American teenager in terms other than slapstick comedy. In each of those decades in which Archie comics had been published.
I love the take he did on Archie with Fiona Staples some years back. And it's Wade. Murd, thank you for pointing this out. I'm definitely going to order this without question. Well done.
Happy to be of assistance.
All right, I'm jumping ahead to page 396 under Pantheon Books. Marvelosity, the Marvel Comic Art Alex Ross hardcover. You may recall when they did Mythology some years back, which is Ross's DC artwork. This book is going to spotlight his Marvel artwork. So, more than 50 have ever been published sketches, paintings, photographs, and working models. And a 14-panel portfolio gallery of Marvel's most beloved characters. He's written a new 10-page story pitting Spider-Man against the Sinister Six. It ends with a stunning twist, an introduction by J.J. Abrams. Wow. All right. An Alex Ross fan. $50. Before the discount, of course. What else, brother?
Well, I'm still turning pages trying to catch up with you at page 396. But in the meantime...
My apologies.
Back on page 328, one thing that caught my eye. A few softcover collections from a company called Comic Mix, reprinting slightly older material from slightly older creators. But there's a collection of, it's an omnibus, it's 288 pages worth of story, of Peter David and Richard Howell's classic independent series, Soul Searchers and Company.
Oh, yeah.
Bunch of sort of strange characters that have come together into a detective agency. I have never read or really thought seriously about reading this series, but I love Peter David as a writer. This is some of his longer ago non-Big Two work, and it's got some artwork by Amanda Connor, and since it's being presented in this fairly affordable package, it's black and white, but it's $25, and I think I may just give it a shot.
All right. I'm going to point on page 353 under Golden Books. I always like to see these for the kids. Black Panther, Warriors of Wakanda, and DC Super Friends Aquaman, Little Golden Book. So any kind of old ages book where they bring these beloved characters to younger audiences, I'm always a big booster for. We should probably remember that, it doesn't involve me anymore as a retailer, but they are promoting Halloween Comic Fest in this previews. In the very, they begin in the front of the book.
Oh, yes, right. There's this big.
So if people are interested in stopping by their local shop to get free full-sized and mini comics, you can look starting on page 29. They have all the different companies' offerings of what they're going to put out. So that is Halloween Comic Fest, October 27th, 2018. Murd, except for tomorrow's, I'm pretty much done. So you fire away if there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
I don't think there is going to be very much.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Under Oni Press, on page 388, they're doing the second in their series of Rick and Morty Presents one-shots, spotlighting particular characters or groups of supporting characters from the Rick and Morty universe. This time from the classic Total Recall episode, which I think is the strongest of the entire series and one of the best single episodes of any TV series I've ever seen. It's about a bunch of psychic alien parasites that invade Rick and Morty's home. They feed on the memories and emotions of human beings. They take the forms of wacky characters and implant themselves in the memories of people they meet. It's kind of a play on the trope of sitcoms and cartoons to just introduce random new characters out of nowhere. Well, one of those characters was named Sleepy Gary, and there's a one-shot now just about that one fictitious psychic parasite-generated character, Sleepy Gary. So if you know that episode and like it, here's an expansion of it in comic book form.
All right. I wanted to put on page 432, jumping into tomorrow's. First of all, I just wanted to quickly praise. I'll go into more detail on maybe on a comic talk. I just got the latest issue of Back Issue, which is dedicated to martial arts characters, Shang-Chi, Iron Fist, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, and many more. Oh, what a tremendous, tremendous magazine. I'll talk about that more in a future episode. But Two Mars, once again, is the essential publisher for comic book history. We have Alter Ego 155 on page 432. They're celebrating the Golden Age artist Norman Maurer. He worked on Crime Does Not Pay, Boy Comics, Daredevil of St. John's 3D, and Three Stooges comics with fellow legend Joe Kubert.
Yep, not just Three Stooges comics, but the Three Stooges short subject films as well. You see here?
Yes,
yep.
It says that here, yep.
Mo was his father-in-law.
There you go. And they're reissuing a couple of great things here. The back issue 61, this is the long box edition. This is a wonderful issue of back issue. They explore all the great tabloid and treasury-sized books from the 70s. Do you have this issue of back issue, Murd?
I don't believe I do.
Murd, you would love this issue. I highly recommend that.
Oh, yeah. I see The Wizard of Oz in there, which was the first ever co-production between Marvel and DC Comics.
Yep. And also The Age of TV Heroes. This is a great hardcover. Came out some years ago, where they explore the live-action TV characters like George Reeves' Superman, the Batman, Adam West Batman, Captain Marvel, of course Wonder Woman. Great stuff. That's a great book. I highly recommend that. And of course, we have to mention page 435, Britannia. Eagerly anticipating issue 1. It hasn't shipped yet, but if you love Roman history, ancient history, and you also like a good detective story, this is Peter Milligan at the peak of his powers. This is great stuff. And as an enthusiastic student of Roman history, they have wonderful essays in the back of each issue giving historical context. Can't praise that enough. And Murray, if you don't mind, I'm going to just jump into the T-shirts for a minute.
Could I say one more thing about the comics, Chris?
Always, my friend, always.
Okay. Yes. Page 410 and 411. This is a book that we've touted on the show several times, going back to the days of Jamie D when he was still with us. From Studio Farland, it's Farland the Goblin. It's issue number 7 and the last of this miniseries. It's the very epitome of quality self-published comics put out here. Put out by a writer and artist who goes by the alias Pug Grumble, otherwise known only by the initial J. And it's the story of a little tree goblin named Farland and his little tree sidekick, Aaronwort, as they travel throughout all the various odd lands of Wug, each of which each of these odd lands has its own little peculiar little quirk or central feature that sets it apart from the others. Farland his race are caretakers of forests, and he lost his own forest, and now he's looking for a new home, and he's running out of different odd lands of Wug to explore. And finally, in this final issue, we'll finally discover whether or not he finds the forest that he's been seeking all this time. It's beautifully, painstakingly illustrated by Pug Grumble. It's written with real wit and whimsy. It's comparable to Bone in quality, as I've said several times. And and David Peterson is doing an alternate cover for this final issue, and he doesn't lend his artwork to just any project. It's got David's seal of approval, and it's certainly got mine as well. It's been a very enjoyable miniseries. I've loved following Farland on his fantasy adventures through the Winglands and the Racelands and the Vaultlands, and now, for good or ill, his quest for a new home is coming to an end, and I am certainly intending to be there for it, and I hope all of you will too.
I do recall you and Jamie D praising this over the years, so thank you, Mert.
My pleasure.
So we have to remember the previews now they flipped it, so all of the ephemera and other merchandise is upside down the other side of the book. So I'm on page 130, the other half of previews. I had to point out from graffiti the Hall of Doom and Hall of Justice T-shirts.
Striking.
If you're a fan of the Super Friends, these are nice shirts. Shane, I hope you're noticing these. I may have to pick up at least one of these. And Murray, I wanted to point out, by the way, I always lament when you're not able to join us, but especially so because when Shane and I did the June previews, and I had to order this. Did you see the Orb T-shirt?
The Orb T-shirt. Oh, as in the Drake Shannon, the motorcycle riding.
Yes.
Oh, yes, one of Jason Aaron's favorite characters, as I understand it. He's used him in lots of strange ways.
Did you see the image of the shirt?
I think I did, yeah. It's like a classic 70s image, isn't it?
He's on the motorcycle, Bronze Age logo. I ordered it immediately. The thought that I didn't even think that I could ever actually own an Orb T-shirt. It's so wonderfully absurd. I cannot wait to wear it across my chest. I'll wear it under whenever I teach, I always wear ridiculous T-shirts underneath my more formal, button-down shirts and sweaters and so forth. And bring a little bit of the wacky into the classroom, just kind of a surreptitious guerrilla warfare type of way.
Do you ever do a Clark Kent-style reveal to your students? Like, this is what I'm wearing underneath. This is my secret identity today?
On occasion, especially if it's like a casual day, I'll just say fudge it and wearing bringing like a silly pop culture T-shirt. To be fair to my school, they don't have a very strict dress code for the teachers. As long as we're wearing, as long as we're covering our bodies and not wearing anything, inappropriate or too outlandish, no one says anything. But I like to have at least a modest amount of decorum. Yeah, I always like to wear a lot of different fun shirts. The orbits go to the top of the pile.
Wonderfully absurd is precisely the way to describe it, Chris.
Indeed. And my friend, I think we shot our bolt.
Bolt shot. Wow, and just coming up on 2 hours now. It's a job well done.
Indeed.
All right. I guess the time has come then to remind everyone that this and every previews episode of Comic Geek Speak was brought to you by Discount Comic Book Service, dcbservice.com. Go there now, check out their discounts, and all the other things that they can do for their regular customers. It's the best place we know of to buy your comic books from an online source. If you'd like to send us an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, you can call 267-702-6642. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @comicgeekspeak. You can go to thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com, our new URL, which is our online forum where you can engage in conversations with your fellow CGS listeners about a variety of geeky topics and also leave us, the geeks, feedback about this and other episodes of the show. Let us know what you're interested in from this previews catalog, etc. We'd like to give special thanks to everyone who has supported the show monetarily, either in the distant past or the recent past. We really appreciate it, and the show would not be what it is today without your help. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and you was psyched about it, going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything the geeks love. From cakes to laser beams, opinions like the seas.